Hello and welcome to Views on News. I am Jawad Tehami. Pakistan has demanded the United Nations Security Council to conduct a thorough investigation to find out how the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan acquired advanced military equipment. Now, Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations, Mr. Munir Akram, while at the United Nations Assistance Mission on Afghanistan, has said, let me quote him, Pakistan faced a major threat from the TTP and its offshoots for their organized cross-border terrorist attacks into the country. These attacks have become more lethal and sophisticated since the banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan terrorists have acquired and used advanced military equipment. These weapons obviously originate from the considerable stocks left behind by the foreign forces. Yet the question is, how did the TTP, a listed terrorist organization, secure these weapons? Ambassador Munir Akram has also urged the United Nations to identify those ways for retrieving these weapons. Mr. Munir Akram has also said that any process of engagement with the Afghan interim government must be constituted on the basis of its response to the core concerns of the international community. Ambassador Munir Akram has also said that Pakistan has also clear evidence that the TTP received support from the country's main adversary. As regards to Pakistan's generosity towards Afghanistan, Ambassador Munir Akram has said that Pakistan has indeed paid an enormous price for 40 years. He has also said that the current plan to repatriate illegal foreigners was an unavoidable compulsion on Pakistan arising from a legitimate security, economic and social concerns. He has also urged the United Nations Security Council to adopt a comprehensive, long-term and a holistic and realistic roadmap for Afghanistan's normalization. Now, peace in Afghanistan, he went on to say, that is a strategic imperative for Pakistan, yet Afghanistan presents a complex and enduring challenge. Now, earlier, the 17th report of the Secretary General of the United Nations on threat posed by ISIL to international peace and security had stated, let me quote that, regional member states reported that NATO-caliber weapons typically associated with the former Afghan National Defense and Security Forces were being transferred to ISIL Khorasan by groups affiliated with Taliban and Al-Qaeda, such as Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan and ETIM, unquote. Earlier, we know Pakistani authorities on a number of occasions have highlighted that these sophisticated weapons have been used by the terrorists in carrying out the terrorist activities in the recent surge in terrorism in Pakistan. However, on the other side, the Afghan de facto authorities have reportedly claimed that all these weapons and the equipment are well preserved. We'll be talking about this significant address by Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations, Mr. Munir Akram, and the salient features and the kind of demands Pakistan has made, especially towards the United Nations. What sort of a mechanism could be chalked out when it comes to ascertaining the fact that how banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan got hold of these sophisticated NATO caliber weapons. For that, we are honored to have been joined in the studio by Ms. Naela Chohan, former ambassador. Ms. Chohan, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. On Skype at the same time, we are honored to have been joined by Brigadier retired Rashid Wali Janjua, senior analyst. Brigadier Janjua, thank you very much for your time, for being with us on Views on News tonight. We really appreciate that. Let me begin the discussion with you, Ambassador Chohan. Now, looking at this particular very significant address that Ambassador Munir Akram has made at the United Nations Assistance Mission for Afghanistan, how important and crucial is it to ascertain that how banned TTP got the hold of those sophisticated weapons?
It's absolutely imperative, and Ambassador Munir Akram has very correctly stated that inquiry has to be done, because at this until now TTP has been doing many nefarious activities in Pakistan, but they were brushed under the carpet, and they were not, taken as seriously by international community. But now, since it has been raised at the UN Security Council, in the UNAMA meeting also, it is very important, and now it will bring Afghan government en garde aussi, also, that they cannot continue to hunt with the hounds and run with the rabbits.
Right, let me go to Brigadier Janjua. Now, Brigadier Janjua, how important and crucial is it to ascertain the fact that how banned Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan acquired these sophisticated NATO caliber weapons?
You see, it was a veritable mess in Afghanistan. We all know that the precipitate withdrawal of United States resulted in a vacuum. The TTA took over Kabul very quickly, and interim Afghan government that they formed, that was not in complete control of the whole Afghanistan as they claimed. And as we know, there were armed caches and dumps that were left behind. And we are cognizant of the fact that there was 250,000 strong Afghan National and Defense Security Force, which just melted into thin air. Now, where did they all go? Some of them joined renegade groups, some of them joined Al Qaeda, few became part of ISKP, some got involved into illegal and criminal activities, which Afghan interim government could not simply control because one, they were confronted with the governance issues, they were not recognized, and there were humanitarian, crisis-like situation emerging. So all told, and then they were all not very serious. Afghan interim government did not think that these elements like TTP that constitute a real and present danger to a neighboring country is of much threat to them. So therein lies the rub. These arms, those were there, and as they claim that they got hold of those, the Afghan interim government is probably using those arms as a leverage with these non-state actors. And it's also, I believe, in the process of selling those arms, because there's a conflict economy that continued ever since the Americans have left. Afghanistan has not become a stable economy, and I think those arms are being funneled to these non-state actors, who in turn are, earning profits through the illegal activities. So this is a vicious circle. And once those arms find themselves in the hands of groups like TTP, those are used against Pakistan. There is M4 assault rifle, sniper rifles, M16, very stable firing platform, night vision devices, and other sophisticated equipment which has fallen into their hands. And the tangible proof has been given to Afghan interim government many a times, but they other than mollifying Pakistan, they have not come up with a strong and concrete action plan. And they, sometime back, there was an attack on Kunar, and when Pakistan protested, they said we got hold of 200 TTP criminals, but in actual fact, those were normal criminals, and later they were let free. So this is the kind of non-challenge attitude, and I think Pakistan needs to adopt a very firm and firm engagement strategy with Afghan interim government.
Right, Brigadier Janjua, now when the international troops were withdrawing from the war-ravaged Afghanistan, ideally, when it comes to dealing with these sophisticated weapons, what should ideally be the situation? Does it normally or naturally become difficult for the withdrawing troops to take back all those weapons and equipment with them when they are withdrawing from that particular territory?
I think had the withdrawal plan gone as per a proper process, and that would have been ensured that they don't leave any equipment behind. But I think it was a very quick withdrawal and very irresponsible withdrawal. So there was a need of a proper plan to hand over these weapons either to a legitimate government. But since the legitimate government, in their estimation, would not come about because the TTA actually swamped, the territory and captured Kabul. So ever since then, uh, we saw how Americans withdrew, and I think if they had a proper strategy, and they could have held on, I think these arms would not have fallen into the hand of these renegade elements and non-state actors. I think they owe a lot of explanation to all of us as to how they left behind these arms. And we know that the report of Special Inspector General for Afghanistan and Reconstruction, SIGAR, it clearly points the finger at a spending of $837 billion on Afghan national security and defense forces and the armor and their arming. So that armament, that training, that just vanished in thin air, and the weapons that are now in the hands of renegade elements and non-state actors, those are proving a menace for the entire region.
Right, Ambassador Chohan, now when we talk about there being denials, just like the denials from the interim Afghan authorities about the presence of the terrorist outfits over there on the Afghan soil, as regard to the access or the acquisition of these sophisticated weapons to those terrorist groups, they seem to be again in the state of denial, claiming that they have the complete control, first of all, on the entire territory of Afghanistan, and secondly, that these weapons and all the equipment are preserved well. So do you think that carries any sort of a weight or truth with itself when they claim that these are well preserved and the terrorist outfits don't have any access to it?
That's a very pertinent question, because this is what Munir Akram also has asked at the UN, that if they claim that their weapons left were well preserved, how come a listed terrorist organization got its hands on it? So evidently there is a hypocrisy there. And then what Brigadier Janjua said, I would endorse that if the Americans claim that they left in an organized manner, then they also have to explain how such a large ammunition dump was left there.
Well, there had been mixed voices coming from within the United States also. For example, John Kirby had denied that $7 billion worth of weapons were actually left over there in Afghanistan. On the other hand, the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Michael McGaul, had said that he has sent letters to officials to testify before the committee about the withdrawal, and has also hinted about those $7 billion worth of weapons having been left back in Afghanistan. So it's a mixed sort of entirely 180-degree opposite sort of voice coming from within the US.
Very true, and that's why we have raised it at the UN. I'm sure when General Asim Munir went to USA also, security issues were discussed, and obviously they were given assurances. But it seems that there's a gap between the words and the actions. So now UN has to look into it, that how come TTP has access to all these latest weaponry, and that they are continuously doing terrorist activities in Pakistan. We are having, every day we are having losses, and the worst is that we have always supported Afghan interim government in a diplomatic manner. Of course, this is the time we did not give them the recognition they expected us to have given, like in the last time, because we were smarter and we knew that we cannot give them that recognition, nor can the international community until the interim Afghan government fulfills the requirements to legitimize itself.
Right. Brigadier Janjua, what's your understanding when we talk about these? You've already shed a bit of light regarding as to the claims of the interim Afghan authorities over there. What about their claims specifically as regard to the acquisition of these sophisticated weapons by various terrorist groups? Do you think it contains any sort of a weight or a truth with itself when they claim that all these weapons and equipment are well preserved?
I think it's all dissembling and prevarication on their part. They're not being truthful when they say that the weapons are under their control and none of the weapons is finding way with the TTP-like elements. You see, we have clear, tangible proofs. Those weapons have been found, captured on the dead bodies and the captured terrorists, and the weapons are on display in our field formations, which are fighting these terrorists. These M4 rifles, M16 rifles, NVDs, with the US imprimatur on them, those are clearly on display. Anyone can visit a field formation and see for themselves. So there's a clear, concrete proof. How can they deny that? Why are they doing that? That is the biggest question. You see, whatever is happening in Afghanistan, and in Afghan interim government claims to be the sole authority, and the spiritual and the temporal leadership also stays with them in the shape of Mullah Hibtullah and the rest of the leadership, which is controlling the levers of the government from the Kabul. Now, how come under such a strict control there are elements which are defying the writ of a government that claims to have complete sway over Afghanistan? Only one thing explains that: their lack of will and their ideological affinity with such groups, and they are perhaps covertly and tacitly helping them, arming them, and using them as a leverage against the neighboring countries. But this is a very negative kind of a leverage that they are using, and probably they are overestimating their relevance to the international community and the neighboring countries. Because as
Please go ahead.
if there is
Please go ahead.
if
Please go.
if there's any solution to this issue, that's got to come primarily from a regional solution. And the regional countries, inclusive Russia, China, India, Iran, Pakistan, and Central Asian states, they are all cognizant of the reality that Afghan situation has to stabilize before a recognition has to be accorded. And the SCO has also taken a decision that a decision would be taken by consensus in SCO about recognition. So if this is the state with the regional countries, how would the world recognize Afghan interim government? So it is for them to understand and realize the implications of their irresponsibility and the need to control those non-state actors whose activity is resulting into terrorism. Because you see, leave aside American arms, there is a whole ecosystem of illegal acquisition of arms, selling of arms. There's a marketplace, and this area, Afghanistan and the newly merged districts, they were awash with arms. We know that there was a culture of carrying arms. And even in our newly merged district, there used to be a concept known as Qaumi Aslaha. Every tribe used to have a cache of arms. So thankfully, due to our counter insurgency and counter-terrorism operations, those areas have been sanitized of such caches. So in Pakistan's newly merged districts, none of those dumps exist, but the same culture still prevails in Afghanistan. Nobody knows who is doing what, how they are earning their keep, and how they are using that ill-gotten money to buy and put arms. Maybe ISKP and Al-Qaeda and other TTP-like elements, they are engaged into narco smuggling, and they are also being given financial sustenance by those who have imposed a kind of a proxy warfare, that is India. I'll not mince my words. So when the money finds its way with such elements, they can always go back And therein comes the role of Afghan interim government. Why is that money being used to purchase arms, which should be in the custody of Afghan interim government? And anything that happens on the soil of Afghanistan is the responsibility, as per the UN resolutions, of Afghanistan interim government to have a complete control on, so that no destabilization is exported outwardly.
Right, Brigadier Janjua, now I'll come back to you to take your deeper understanding with these sort of denials by the interim Afghan authorities. When Pakistan demands that the United Nations should conduct a thorough investigation to find out how banned Taliban Pakistan acquired these sophisticated weapons, if the United Nations goes on to creating a mechanism in order to ascertain this particular fact, that how did they basically get the hold of those weapons, do you think such a thorough investigation could be more viable without the cooperation of the interim Afghan authorities? I'll come to you with this very question. Let me take the view of Ambassador Chohan on this particular. Do you think such thorough investigation without the cooperation of the continuous denial by the interim Afghan authorities is going to be viable and possible?
It has to be, because mechanism will be devised to ensure that facts are revealed. Yes, the interim Afghan regime has been denying, has been saying things that it never really meant, misleading the world. Whether it was status of women, education of women, stability in the country, economy, and that's why Munir Akram also spoke of the 1988 UN Committee on anti-terrorism and illicit trafficking, because they are making money through these illicit organizations who are indulging in all sorts of activities. But there will be evidence on this. It's not as simple that you say, oh, I didn't do it. They will, you can track the sale of weapons, you can track all these activities. It's not as simple as they think it is.
Right. When we specifically talk about the 17th report of the Secretary General on the threat posed by ISIL to international peace and security, it had mentioned under the title of Daesh access to weapons, categorically saying, let me quote once again, with the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan, member states expressed concern over the proliferation of large quantities of weapons and other military equipment within Afghanistan and into the neighboring states. Regional member states reported that North Atlantic Treaty Organization caliber weapons typically associated with the former Afghan National Defense and Security Forces were being transferred to ISIL-K by groups affiliated with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda such as TTP and ETIM. So this particular report came a couple of months back. Now, the United Nations was aware of the fact that these particular NATO caliber weapons were being provided by TTP and ETIM to ISIL-K. Right. So now with this particular demand, as Pakistan happens to be the direct victim of the terrorist resurgence from across the border in the recent past, do you think the United Nations is now seriously going to look into the matter and fulfill its responsibility towards international peace and security?
I'm confident that it will. That's why Munir Akram, took up the issue at the UN. Because as you know, when the ISF forces were here, they were NATO forces under the UN umbrella, and they had brought a lot of arms and ammunition. So those countries that left their ammunition, not just, that's why Munir Akram didn't name any specific country, because there were many countries involved whose weapons are now finding way in the wrong hands. So that inquiry has to be done, and that's what Pakistan has called for.
Right. Brigadier Janjua, your understanding as to the cooperation that would be needed or expected from the interim Afghan authorities when it comes to conducting the thorough investigation into ascertaining the fact that how TTP got the hold of these weapons, and also with the demand now made by Pakistan so emphatically, the United Nations was already aware of the fact that how these sophisticated weapons were being transferred to ISIL-K by the affiliates of Taliban and Al-Qaeda such as TTP and ETIM?
I think these pressure tactics would work only if the international community has the tangible and concrete proof and it is very serious about terrorism actions on Pakistan soil. But I don't think so, except Pakistan, the rest of the international community is too worried, except mere verbal blandishments. They haven't come up with any concrete, reaction. Even the regional countries, you see, there is a Moscow format which the Russia intends to lead, but the America opposes that, which includes all the Central Asian countries and all the immediate neighbors of Afghanistan, to help resolve and stabilize the Afghan situation. That has also not got off the ground so far. The US-led initiative is also come a cropper because of the non-cooperation of countries like Russia and concerns of Afghan government, which is not very keen to be part, despite being, in touch with Americans through the Doha office. Uh, I'm personally very skeptical of all these UN initiatives. It's got to be a realization on part of Afghan interim government itself, provided the right leverages work against them, and those leverages are the humanitarian aid and even the economic aid, because their economy is in a bad state, and if they keep, encouraging this illegal ecosystem, then these groups like ISKP in times to come, ETIM, etc., will pose a problem for Afghanistan's integrity itself. And the responsibility, I think, devolves upon the regional countries and those which are not immediate neighbors like Iran, like India and Russia also, which should play its part and should not, fish in the troubled waters to settle scores with, adversaries. So the responsibility on part of regional countries and the right leverages by the international community, that might do the trick, and a resolve on part of Pakistan's government to take all those measures that are necessary to do two things. One, to remain very aggressively engaged with the Afghan interim government and keep sensitizing them of the need to be responsible. And secondly, to take care of our own territory, sanitize the areas which are terror infested, institute a stronger cross-border mechanism, which the recent policy guidelines have already established. There is a need for coherence, consistency, and resolve in our policies, because it's going to be a long and messy war. There are no, silver bullets and quick solutions. We have to display the strategic patience while remaining engaged with the Afghan interim government, and at the same time showing complete resolve in sticking to whatever decisions we have taken, and those include a single entry visa regime from Pak-Afghan border, deportation of illegal migrants, and a complete blockade of smuggling routes and smuggling's entire ecosystem and its link with the crime. These are the areas on which we need to concentrate, and I'm sure the cumulative effect of all these measures will yield positive results.
Right, Brigadier Janjua, as you talk about the responsibility of the regional countries and the international community, what about specifically about the United States of America? Now, when it comes to the ascertaining the facts, how the banned outfits over there on the Afghan soil got the hold of that, there have been differing voices from within the United States of America. As I've already quoted, I got that question to Ambassador Chohan. I want your take regarding that one. If you allow me, let me quote once again the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, Michael McCall, who said, we want to talk to Jen Psaki. The messages he was sending out from the White House was so different from what was happening on the ground. You know, John Kirby made the comments that there were no weapons left behind, which is insane. He said there are $7 billion of weapons, and I can show the types of the weapons and the cash. Now, Ambassador Munir Akram has also talked about, urged the United Nations to identify those ways how to retrieve these weapons. Now, first, your take regarding as to why differing voices from within the United States of America, and what measures could be deployed in order to ensure that retrieval of these weapons from the banned outfits.
You think when the United States of America, it withdrew from this region, it had a clear roadmap, because its center of gravity of its geopolitical interest had shifted from South Asia towards East Asia and Indo-Pacific. But the significant interest that USA still has is in the realm of counter-terrorism. And that's one area in which Pakistan and United States have, been engaged in. And the current visit of Chief of Army Staff to America also was, it was meant to discuss, amongst other things, the security situation in Afghanistan and its impact on Pakistan. So this is an area in which Americans can still contribute by way of, collaborating with Pakistan in taking control of the situation and to counter the terrorist entities like TTP. And the Doha process that is still on provides some kind of a hope that the linkages with the Taliban that the United States still has, it might yield some kind of a understanding on part of both countries to stabilize the situation. Because as they say, United States is the neighbor of every country. It might not be a regional country here in South Asia, but still it has its clout because of its past involvement and the current engagement with Afghan Taliban covertly. So I personally think that Americans, despite their different statements coming from their establishment and the Washington and the Beltway wisdom, I think the most important thing for Pakistan and America to do is to collaborate in countering the terrorism by way of better surveillance collaboration, better, instituting a mechanism wherein we can have a better oversight over the situation in Afghanistan and coordinating the humanitarian relief efforts of the world so as to use this leverage of humanitarian aid with Afghanistan and play a very important part along with other powers like China, Russia, and the regional countries to insist on Afghan interim government to show more responsibility and take more responsibility for controlling the activities of terrorist entities that are operating with impunity from their soil.
Right, Ambassador Chohan. Now, Ambassador Munir Akram in his address has also talked about the kind of generosity over the last 40 years Pakistan had towards Afghanistan. Now, he's also talked about the Secretary General's report that the Afghan interim authorities have further consolidated the control of Afghanistan across all spheres of governance and brought some modicum of stability in the country. As we all know, that interim Afghan authorities have also claimed to have brought in more stability in terms of economy, also getting more hold of the territory and making the security better overall. Now, when it comes to Pakistan's generosity of hosting millions of Afghan refugees for over 40 years now, when there is a drive due to the social, economic, and also the other concerns which the ambassadors talked about in a very dignified and a humane way. When the Afghan Taliban claim that the situation over there is better, so why don't they happily just take back all the Afghan refugees back to their country?
That's a very good question. They have to be. It's their responsibility. They are their citizens, and Pakistan even now is hosting about 1.6 million who are registered PORs or who are holding the Afghan citizenship cards, and we are also holding on top of that about 700,000 that came after the interim Taliban government took over, and on top of it we have a large number of Afghans waiting in Pakistan for going to third country. Now, that is what he said in his speech also, that the third countries who had offered their generosity, let them now come forward and take these people, because they are neither here nor there. It is their responsibility. So, if they are the guardians of human rights, then they should protect the human rights of these people who are suffering waiting for visas. As regards Pakistan is concerned, we have acted with magnanimity, with dignity. We have not pushed them out, unlike if you see in many Western countries how the illegal immigrants are treated. We ensured their voluntary dignified return, and we have told the interim Afghan government that if their claims were true, then they have no reason to not accept these people, or else they should accept that they are a failure and they cannot assimilate these people there. That would be a different debate then. But given their claims, currently they are honor bound to receive their nationals and give them that integration in the Afghan society, in the Afghan economy.
Right, so talking about specifically about their claims, if they hold any sort of truth with themselves. Now, Ambassador Munir Akram has talked about his hint towards this particular Secretary General's report that the Afghan interim authorities have further consolidated their control of Afghanistan across all spheres of governance and brought some modicum stability in the country also. So, do you think that resonates with the claim, this particular report of the Secretary General, with the claims of the Afghan authorities?
Or yes, it does, and then Munir Akram also said that we can see that like drug trafficking has reduced, the interim Afghan government has a larger control of the territory of Afghanistan. So, yes, there are positive indicators.
So, there should naturally be, in that sort of a scenario, they should naturally be taking the Afghan refugees back to their country.
Exactly.
Right. Let me take Brigadier Janjua's take on this particular thing. Don't you think they should, the interim Afghan authorities should be happily taking back all the Afghan refugees? Pakistan had been showing generosity towards for the last 40 years, especially given the fact that they claim now that they have got better economy in running, and they've got better security, and they've also got a good grip of the governance there.
Ideally, they should, because they've been claiming that everything is honky-dory in Afghanistan. But there are two maladies that they suffer from. One is the cognitive dissonance, the contradiction between the reality and what they claim to be truth. They are giving the impression of stability, control, whereas the actual situation is that Afghanistan is bedeviled with a very adverse economic situation and adverse law and order situation. So that's the reality. Second malady is the age-old irredentism that all Afghan governments in the past have been prone to, and Taliban, Afghan interim government cannot possibly display any flexibility on that score. So once we say that we institute greater border controls, institute a visa and passport regime, and we deport all the migrants which came without any documents, there's a pushback from Afghan interim government. So ironically, why is this pushback? And it is because they are also accruing rents out of the illegal activities that these illegal migrants are involved with. They have bought properties here, they are doing illegal business, and some of the rents are being plowed back and given to the Afghan interim government members. So unfortunately, that is the reality, which is an ugly reality. That is why we say that once we have taken this decision of deporting with dignity these illegal migrants, we should stick to it, and we should take care of those POR holders, 1.4 million of them, which we have obligations to protect under trilateral agreement between UNHCR, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. And there's yet another category of zero point 0.7 million which came after 2021, and those came in the garb of resettlement. Now, countries like Canada, UK, and United States, they promise something like, I think, zero point 0.1 million to be resettled. Out of them, 58,000 have already gone, 48,000 are in the process of applying. And out of this zero point 0.7 million, there is a vast majority that does not fulfill the criterion of resettlement. So that is therein lies the rub. Now we are saddled with that category as well, and our resources are being expended despite our own economic difficulties. We are hosting them, and international community has to be aware of these problems of Pakistan
Right.
that are.
Right, Brigadier retired Rashid Wali Janjua, senior analyst. Thank you very much for being with us on the show tonight, joining us through Skype. In the studio, we were honored to have been joined by Ambassador Naela Chohan, former ambassador. Thank you very much for your time also for being with us on the show tonight. Really appreciate that. With that, we come to the end of today's episode. Till the next one, take good care of yourselves.